Well, let's see. We got a big space center down there in Florida. They cut the funding for the space center. Well, I wonder why they cut the funding for the space center. Well, it's because they had a bunch of sand lots down there. The reason they had sand lots is because nobody was doing anything but partying, doing drugs, and selling their kids. Well, the space center is doing space research. So let's help them out with some common sense. Well, I drove around. I didn't see much farming going on. Florida used to be the citrus state, where they grow oranges and stuff. You'll notice at the grocery store, there's no seeds in those oranges because ain't nobody growing any oranges in Florida. So they got a space lab where they're growing stuff in space, where it's cold. So you go up north where they're growing crops and stuff. Well, they're growing stuff during the winter. I said, you could grow crops, wind generators to generate power. So they got wind generators, you can generate power, keep the soil warm, grow stuff during the winter with the good dirt and stuff because it's not all sand. So they got all this sand down there in these sand lots because they're not growing any real crops. They're just farming babies. So North doesn't really like people farming babies when they should be farming orange groves. So they made a bunch of grove churches to say, hey, where's the orange groves? Well, they're all grown over with weeds and stuff because nobody was growing any oranges. Just here and there and here and there. So they said, well, you could grow crops during the winter up north. I wonder why Florida didn't get money for an education bill. Florida didn't get money for the space center. Florida didn't get money for this. Florida didn't get money for that. Well, when Mr. Kirk walks up into the courthouse and can't even get anything done, and they can't get any farming done, they can't get any improvements done, but they can make little game show houses and a bunch of bullshit. Mr. Kirk's talking about new energy and growing crops and making real jobs with real stuff. And, well, that's an economy, and that's called an economical stimulus package. The stimulus checks were to, well, how do you start businesses? Well, you start businesses just like a Army, Navy, Marine, Air Force needs supplies and food. In case you guys didn't check out George Washington in history, you got to be able to equip them with more than just guns and clothes and bullshit. So, got to grow crops. So, well, the Ecological Society is an army too. It's called Army of the People, meaning you got to grow crops to feed your people. So we go, well, how can we grow more crops? Well, they said, well, if you got sand and cold and all this other stuff, we'll just put a space station in space. And so the whole world, that if you can grow plants in space, then you ought to be able to grow plants on Earth for food and shit. So we go, wow, we got solar panels, wind generators, habitats for humanity. What's a habitat for humanity? Oh, greenhouses. So Mr. Kirk down there, and we had a greenhouse for Judy Green Kirk's greenhouse, because obviously people couldn't grow stuff, so got to teach them how to grow stuff. So we're like, well, we'll make a space lab and we'll grow stuff in space. If you can grow stuff in space with no gravity, then you ought to be able to can grow stuff on Earth with gravity. Oh, so you mean people can grow stuff? Well, since the South wasn't really growing a whole lot of stuff, we were like, well, if the North can grow stuff during the winter, then with warm weather most of the year, then the South ought to be able to plant some crops. So the South was like, well, if we don't have any crops, then the North would be like, ooh. So the North went ahead and innovated and decided to learn how to grow crops during the winter. So the North doesn't really need the South for their bullshit. So the South ought to fucking straighten up.